Even the bloody cane toads think that I wasn't coming back. Piss off. Oh, get out. G'day everybody, I am back in the shed and I'm going to make myself a brand new straightening jig. This thing is absolutely genius. I actually got this idea from Silas, and you might recognise Silas from one of my later videos on my main channel. He's the Canadian bloke, runs Cape and Mache, had the group of legends basically make that beautiful video for me. I hope you go back and watch that one. It was cool. That was about a month ago. That was pretty much me signing off for the shed for about a month. But I am back now. This is basically his straightening jig. I love it so much, and I'm going to remake it and also explain a few things along the way. A lot of people had a lot of questions for him about his particular jig. So I'm really going to talk a lot of shit and why I'm going to make it right now. Let me quickly explain the science behind this jig and why it is, in my opinion, brilliant, and I wish I had seen it 7 years ago. Okay, it's based off a standard pallet board, so about 110, 120, 1200 mils. Whenever we rip through the blade, we need a nice parallel edge, so we can't have any of this action, okay? So that's where all those straightening jigs, they provide that other straight edge for us so we can rip our board. But as you know, there's a lot of setup, clamps, toggles, all the things we've all tried. What this jig relies on is, firstly, you need to have one pallet board worth of jig this side of the saw blade and one pallet board worth of jig on this side exiting the saw blade. Where this works brilliantly, and I don't have a wonky enough pallet board to demonstrate, so let's assume this blue tape is the most severe of warps in a pallet board. What we can't do is enter any fence and have this warp hanging around the corner or having that wobble, because it's going to bind up in the blade and most likely kick back and do you some damage. So with this jig, as long as the extreme front edge and the extreme back edge of that warp is touching the fence, it is referenced. It can't wobble. So you have to always use the inwards curve. What's that? Convex? Concave? Concave? Skateboard. Concave? Can't remember. Okay, so the tips of the board is what I'm trying to say. The tips of the board have to be already referenced against the fence. So as we're pushing through, this board has nowhere to shuffle left and right. All this void, it's not a problem. The tips are touching, it pushes through all the way. And if our jig is long enough out the other side, those tips are still touching. Stand by. Again, as the board is exiting the saw blade, those two tips are still touching. So the entire length of this cut has been referenced on this massive long fence. It doesn't have a chance. It doesn't have a chance to drop in behind your normal fence, pushing this end out. It's completely referenced all the way through. So again, the genius of this jig is that we're not spending any time clamping things down. The only problem is storing this massive long jig, which I can do up on the roof. As long as this fence is perfectly straight, then happy days. Away we go. Genius. So, I don't actually have anything that is 2.4 meters long to build this jig. So, if I'm going to do this now, I need to dodgy something up. But ideally, I'll splash out and get a piece of form ply and rip down the full length of the form ply and make it nice and robust and form ply shiny. I'm just pondering whether it's worth making it out of this or just waiting to get the form ply. Okay. Oh! Check it out! Oh! Oh! Wasn't meant to show you that yet. So literally day one back out here, and I've had a bit of a clean up, and I said, all right, I'm going to try and be better with dust. Okay, dust collector's empty. Got the new shroud from Anthony before I get into this whole ripping extravaganza. So I just want you to ignore the next bit. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Technically, the dust is outside of the shed. When looking for a wonky board out the back, I actually forgot I had all these long lengths of decking. Now, they are actually pretty straight and true, which is great. It's going to give me what I need fore and aft of the blade. I'm going to make a slight alteration to Silas's original genius idea. Nothing really wrong with what he did. He did mention the catches, which he dealt with just fine, and that would be suitable. The important thing to remember, doesn't matter if you do Silas's version or you do my version, this next step is actually what keeps this fence nice and straight, which is to get some sort of straight board. So laying a board on its side and creating that 90 degrees, this board is going to keep those boards from going skew with, and you can bulk before and aft up as much as you want. I'm just going to clamp to my fence. But that just, for me, that just leaves a nice free path across here, and I can achieve the straightness from the boards that I have. It'll still move as one, which is great. Again, that's part of the speed of this thing, just adjusting it to the particular board that you now want to rip. And I have this massive long fence, uninterrupted, that my wonky board can enter down here, reference against the fence, and exit up there, still referenced. I'm excited. If we don't end up with a chamfer on here, then I've had a bad day, but you know that's coming. All right, these dirty edges, I don't have the in-feed and out-feed to actually rip a nice clean edge on these. That doesn't matter. As long as this thing is straight, then we're good to go. Looks pretty straight. Keeping in mind as well, I'm ripping down my boards. If there is a little wonk in this, it doesn't really matter. What I'm doing is trying to get that 99% of the wonk out of the board, because from here I'm going to glue these slabs together. I'm going to run them through thicknesses, jointers, all sorts of things. The timber is going to get squarer and squarer and squarer as I go, because I'm going to check square as I go. I've got two boards laminated together. Straight away, that's going to straighten things up, but I'm referencing them against my fence, and then I've extended out with just some leftover pieces to then reference the rest of this fence, so that can keep going and get that get the in-feed and out-feed nice and straight. And then I can come back, clean it up, and away we go. While that glue's drying, let me show you this thing. Anthony at Barber's Paddock Woodworking, he has been making our Sherwood table saws a little bit better when it comes to dust collection. An actual vacuum connection overhead proves far better than trying to run 100mm size down at a port. It's not very effective, the stock standard one. So I realized that early on. I started attaching a vacuum directly to my overhead dust shroud, the one that came with it. It's not great. So he designed one for his machine. He then went and bought the riving knife for my machine and Trent's machine, and then he went and made Mark 1 Dana-made dust shroud. Both myself and Trent now have one, which Anthony did 100% for free because he's a crazy guy. And I mean, he's very helpful and he's a good bloke. Literally, he's amazing. He's cool. So please go and follow him. His channel is the best. He has all sorts of woodworking shop improvements, projects,
lots of form ply, but it's a really cool channel, and I think if you like this Dana-made talkie, how's your father, you're going to love Anthony's, so please go over there and check that out. A nice fast straightening jig is going to be awesome, but now I can also have, hopefully, overhead dust actually catching a lot of that mess, because it's literally one of the messiest things you do, because you're taking off just the edge and that shit is going everywhere. So hopefully we're going to catch a bit more with this. He also made instructions for me, step by step, and a QR code that links to a video of how to set this up and get the most out of it. And I thought it was actually going to be a piss take, but it was actually very helpful. He's a freak of nature. Legend. Anthony's bought a 3D printer recently, and he has gone crazy. He bought my little plan off the internet. He then zoomed in and noticed that it wasn't quite square. But he tuned it up. He then went ahead and did a whole heap of custom slogans. So we got check square, full business human, just get started, and of course, be excellent to each other. You can buy the plans and print your own, but what you can also do is go to Anthony's website and you can order yourself a custom set of Dana-made corner clamps, which he's going to print out for me. And we've got a little bit of a Bubba Gump relationship as far as profiting goes. But initially, Anthony, you are taking all the money. Okay? These will be up on my website as well. Buy the plans, ask him to print some. If you're really nice, he will actually print whatever you want on here. But just know that I may not be able to advertise such things, if you know what I'm saying. There's one more thing. And then what he also did was he made a custom box for 4 squares, but this one in particular is a prize for the scrapwood build-off that historically has been run by Tim from Turgworks in the UK, which he's still doing. But he's tag teamed with Sam from Gumtree Hill Woodworks, who's being the pseudo host in Australia. So I don't know which one is getting the prize and how that whole competition works, because as you know, I've been out of action for at least a month. So how cool is that? So hopefully whoever makes something cool is going to end up with this. Legends all round.
So my jointer here is probably a good example of what in-feed and out-feed and how it's important. So I've got a bit of a warp in this board here, and I can't just run it straight across a jointer because it's going to drop off the edge or start off the edge as it goes in. So what I'm doing is just taking off the front and the back edge initially, and then slowly working my way along until I actually get this board straight and it's actually pushing along the nice flat surface of the jointer. So little side story there, and I hope you enjoyed that. Alrighty, here we go. This is the maiden voyage, or the maiden cut, using this dash shroud on that board that I just straightened on the jointer. And no surprises, it works amazingly. So a little bit of dust popped out here and there, but normally when I do straightening, my t-shirt is covered in shit. I've hit the pile of wood over there, so the cut was finished, but that was as far as I could get. Okay, so now I've got my big ass fence. And I have, where is it? I have the straight edge that I took off the jointer. It's parallel most of the way. Just towards the end of the board runs off, which is not a biggie. That's not the edge I'm using. So I like all the decking grooves, so they're going to be on the top. So that'll go on there. So the fact that just sitting there, it runs parallel with the new fence, that's a good sign. So I'm going to screw that down as much as possible into both pieces of that fence, and I've now got something very rigid, and then it needs a bit of a clean up, but it's effectively good to go. So stay tuned, stick with me. Now before I screw the horizontal piece on to lock this in nice and straight, if you don't have a jointer
and you are happy that you've clamped up your new fence nice and straight, you can put any board on top, let it overhang, then just come along with a flush trim and clean it up. This top board, its job is purely to stop the fence from warping where it's not touching the fence. So it's literally just the strength of this. As long as your fence is straight, you're laughing. Use what you have to do. Steel beams that I keep around, generally they're pretty straight and plumb. Have a good check if it looks good enough. That will be something else that you could initially use to clamp up to a satisfactory standard so you can keep progressing with this little project. But as you can see here, my router is always fitted with a chamfer bit. You know why? I'm also just going to use all these decking screws that I pull out of the deck, because probably not going to use them for anything else, but they'll do the job. As long as you drill a nice big pilot hole, you're not going to crack your new fence. And stay away from the inside edge so you don't end up having one of these pop out through the side of your fence. I'm saying that before I do it. You watch what happens. I bet you I can do one. Okay, again, this is very simple, but originally a lot of people didn't quite understand how this thing works. Without insulting your intelligence, let me show you here with one that it's just got a bit of a bow. So as you can see here, the tip of this board is referenced against the fence, which started way back here, 1.2 from that blade. Followed along, you can still see the gap all the way. Up there, the other end of the board is referenced against the fence. So that bow, that will stay there all the way out the other side. But what we're going to end up with is our first straight edge. No clamps, no toggles. Happy days. Let me do some more. Okay, so when I first saw Silas's plan, he has the support on this side. He has the rigidity provided as well as infeed all in one little design. Because I didn't want that, because I wanted the board directly on top of the table saw table, and my rigidity is going this way over the fence, I don't actually have any outfeed. What I will be doing is sticking an infeed just on this section of my fence, and that will again add some more rigidity, or double the rigidity to this end of the fence. And same on the other end, I'll put a little bit there. Not just yet though, and just thinking out loud here, normally I push the boards through and I let them fall onto the floor. So I might actually leave that initially so that I can continue doing that, because again, this is all about speed and not wasting time, not being in a rush. But if those boards can drop away onto the floor, I've got a clear path for the next one. Let me put that on, do a few more, and then we're getting very close to the great chamferization. I'm pretty excited to be back in the shed, in case you haven't noticed. It's time. Anyway, this is my first day back out here. I'm already feeling pretty good. So this chamferising, it's just going to be a reminder of how good it makes me feel on the inside. Anyway, I'm not actually going to straighten all this timber today. The plan is to build the jig, make sure it works, test out the dust collection, throw this footage together into a video, and send it out to you all in one day. Let's see if I can do that. Oh, how good!
Okay, I'm just throwing this little shim in here before I then clamp the fence to my existing fence, just so this whole massive thing slides right on the table saw top, nice and easy. No other reason. Okay, here we go. Straightening jig, the fastest ever.
One last look at it there. So here we go. Front edge of the board is referenced against the fence. Down there, you can see the back is still referenced. We have our beautiful straight edge. We have our wonky donkey side, which will be the next step. We can remove this, and we can run all of this stuff through the table saw, parallel boards, the fastest jig you'll ever make. So check it out, we've got 8 boards, all varying widths. I've just whipped off just enough to get my first straight edge. They don't need to be the same because I might want to use thicker pieces for some stuff, thinner pieces for other. But the only time penalty is literally unlocking the fence and adjusting it, whatever you need to adjust to get one straight edge. Happy days. Okay, so there we go, the fastest jig you'll ever make. No, it's not the fastest jig you'll ever make. It's the fastest straightening jig you'll ever make. It doesn't even make sense. It's the fastest jig for straightening pallet wood that you'll ever make. So, if I could just go back in time 7 years and make this, holy shit, the amount of time I would save. So, once you got your jig, you're effectively just running boards through the table saw, both sides, and that's as long as it needs to take. So all those other clamps that I've been shilling over the years, as I slowly got better and better ones, they're now redundant with this thing. Just make sure you store it in a nice place where it can remain straight. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but just in case. Don't lean it against the wall. Over time, it might come out of straightness. Okay, if you make one of these, show me on Instagram, tag me, we'll share it in the stories, and we'll start spreading the good word about Silas's fastest straightening jig ever. Genius. Catch you later. Just finally, so the key takeaways. You need at least one pallet board on this side of the blade tip, and at least one pallet board on that side of the exiting blade tip. Okay? Me, I've gone with in-feed to support the board, stop it pushing down and underneath, causing drama at the saw blade. And you need, obviously, a nice straight fence. Easiest way is to get a board and fix that in the opposite direction. That's going to keep everything nice and square. Me, I've gone with 2 boards, glued them together, clamped it against the fence, as you saw. This thing is amazing. It's amazing. All right, that's all I have to say about that.